On this day, 17 years ago, 4 acts of terrorism changed America forever. Many people believe the events of 9/11 and the acts that followed were the beginning of World War III. We will discuss the events that occurred on 9/11 on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I thank you for joining me on Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. And a very somber day for many all across the United States. This is the 17-year anniversary of 9/11, the trade towers being hit by the airplanes in New York. And I'm going to be discussing that today and some of the ramifications, the possible prophetic implications of that event. But before I do, I need to announce Brother Baxter's prophecy conference coming up this weekend. It's going to be in Joliet, Illinois. He's going to be teaching on Trump, Jerusalem, and Armageddon. That's this Saturday, September 15th at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that's at the Life Church of Joliet, 714 Bethel Drive, Joliet, Illinois. And then on Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., he's going to be speaking on breaking prophetic fulfillments, updated prophetic fulfillment, proofs of the prophecies that are being fulfilled now and ones that will come in the near future. And then, of course, the ever-popular Q&A session to follow. And that's one of the most popular segments of our conferences that we do Sunday after the Breaking Prophetic Fulfillments. Irvin and I do a Q&A session from the crowd. There's a roving mic, and you'll be able to come up to the mic, or an usher or somebody can come up to you. You can ask a question from the floor and get it answered, as long as we know the answer. And so it's always a good time. And what a great outreach that the Lord has given us the opportunity to do through the conferences. So if you'd like to join Irvin this coming Saturday and Sunday morning, that's Joliet, Illinois, Life Church, Joliet, 714 Bethel Drive, Joliet, Illinois. If you'd like more information on that, go to endtime.com or call 1-800-363-8463. So my main topic today is, of course, 9/11, September 11th, 2001. And what a somber day for all of us here in the United States. And I will never forget that day. I know most of you can remember. I know my mom always tells me years ago, I know exactly where I was at when they said Kennedy, they came on and made the announcement that President Kennedy had been assassinated right down here in Dallas. And she can tell me, she retells the story specifically, what she was doing, where she was at, who she was with. And it was a momentous occasion in her life. And I remember on 9/11, many of you can as well, you can remember where you were at, what you were doing when the planes hit the trade towers in New York 17 years ago today. I know in my own personal experience, a coworker and I were returning to a construction project. We were building a big addition on a person's house, and we were coming back from the lumberyard just in the truck like any other day. We were riding back, and we were listening to the radio, and they said that an airplane had hit the North Tower, the North Trade Tower. And me and him were bantering back and forth, saying, we were speculating, hey, maybe a pilot had taken off from JFK or LaGuardia, and maybe he had had too many drinks the night before. And perhaps he got off course and hit one of the trade towers. And so, we were, back then I was a young man, we were kind of making light of it, and even though it was a devastating thing, we thought, well, maybe somebody just had a few too many drinks and got off course. And but along with it was a tragic event. I know that, but it was, you know, I didn't get the gravity of it at that point. Well, we're still riding in the truck a while later, and they came on the radio. We still hadn't made it back to our project. They came on the radio again and said that a second plane had hit the South Tower. And I remember, I mean, like it happened yesterday, my friend and I both looked at each other and we said, terrorism, at the same time. And that's, of course, exactly what it was. And so America has never been the same since that occasion. And then last year, on this date, I flew into New York from Dallas on September 11th. We were going up there to do a prophecy conference. And I could see Lower Manhattan as we flew in. I could see Lower Manhattan where the trade towers once stood. And I remember telling Jana, my wife, that what an eerie feeling I had, because I told her, you realize that at that time, 16 years ago, that morning, those planes were flying into New York about the time that we were flying through there to land at LaGuardia Airport. And so it was a momentous occasion in my life. Just like in my mom's life, President Kennedy being assassinated, in my life, one of the momentous occasions was the trade towers, and we'll talk more about it when we come back from the break.
Many Christians admit end-time Bible prophecy is very complex and difficult to understand, and for some, a little bit scary. But what if you could understand Bible prophecy? What if you could know what will happen and how the United States will play a key role during end-time events? When you call today and get Understanding the End Time DVD curriculum, you can have peace about what is to come while understanding the prophetic events that appear in our headlines every day. When you call or go online to endtime.com and order, you'll learn the answer to the biggest prophecy question of all. Will the rapture take place, and when will it happen? This 14-part DVD series is the definitive end-time prophecy Bible study available. And for this limited time, you can get it for just $149. Don't miss this special offer. Understanding the End Time. Call now. 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME. Or go to endtime.com today.
I have left a piece of my heart in Israel and her people. We would like to thank End Time for doing such an awesome job with our Israel tour. We marvel at your team keeping the time schedule, keeping everyone comfortable, the wonderful driver, the brilliant guide, the entire tour program, good hotel choices, and stellar food. We had the privilege to rub shoulders with Pastor Baxter, listened to his current teachings, and had some interesting questions answered so eloquently. He is wonderful. Helene from Australia.
Join Irvin and Judy Baxter May 2nd through the 17th, 2019 for the ultimate Israel tour experience with a Greek island cruise. Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 to sign up today.
So, of course, we're going back today and looking at 9/11 and the terrorist attacks on the trade towers and the Pentagon 17 years ago today. And my question today, in looking at the aftermath of that event, what occurred, of course, President Trump declared a global war on terrorism. And think about that, a global war on terrorism. I mean, that would be like the war on drugs, almost a never-ending war. But he felt like, hey, I've got to do something. I'm declaring war on terrorism. And of course, America, the world really has never been the same since then. And my question is, in looking at it through the lens of prophecy, we know there's a war because he went straight to the Middle East, obviously. And there's a war that's going to emanate out of the Middle East region called the Sixth Trumpet War. So we have speculated. Now, we've speculated. We've asked the question, did 911 start was at the beginning of the prophesied sixth trumpet war. And that's the thing that comes across our mind now, reflecting back on the 911 experience, what happened, the tragedy, is that, did that start the sixth trumpet war? That's the question we have to ask. And though we don't know what exactly will trigger the beginning of World War III, we don't know if 911 did specifically. Now, as I go through some of my material today, I'll kind of lean in that direction, but I can't prove it conclusively according to Scripture. And so don't go away and say, well, hey, Dave and Irvin believe that 911 started World War III. I can't answer that conclusively. But a lot of the pieces do fit, and you'll see that before the end of the program today. So, though we don't know exactly what will trigger the beginning of World War III, we do know that the war will occur. And you've heard us talk about it many times, the Sixth Trumpet War in Revelation 9. However, there are noted historians, people that are, they study history and they've studied geopolitical events, a lot of different things over the years. And they say that we're already involved in World War III in the beginnings of it. And Mr. James Woolsey, the director of the CIA under President Clinton's administration, he stated that World War III began on 9/11 with the attack on the Twin Towers, because we've been enmeshed in the Middle East since then in everything that's going on there. Every conflict that's going on, we're involved in it in one way or another. And Thomas Friedman, the famous columnist for the New York Times, he believes the same thing. Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, he said that World War III began on 9/11, and they're just not telling our world what's really going on right now because they launched the war on terrorism. And he said we're already in World War III. And then, of course, President George W. Bush said it might be a 30-year war. And man, did he prophesy that right. He also said in May 6, 2006 that the revolt of Flight 93 by the passengers was the first counterattack to World War III. So even George W. Bush stated that World War III actually did begin on 9/11. And just because it hasn't flared up and we know according to the prophecy 1/3 of the world's population is going to be destroyed, it does not mean that we are not in the beginnings of that war as we speak and have been fighting it for many years. So whatever the cause of the conflict, I'm not saying, nor would Irvin, that 9/11 specifically started World War III. Because I can't, a lot of the clues fit, but we can't prove it conclusively at this point. But even though we don't know what the conflict that's going to trigger the World War III, we know that eventually there will be a World War III that engulfs the biggest majority of the world, and it's going to kill 2.5 billion, with a B, human beings, and it's unlikely that that would be anything but a nuclear war. And I think if you go to Revelation 9, verse 13 through 21, you can see that it will be a nuclear war. It's going to be about just over 40 times the amount of casualties of World War II. So you can only imagine. The World War II, totally devastating. 52 million killed. There's going to be about 2.5 to 2.6 billion killed in this World War III. So my question today is, did 9/11 start World War III? And I want to go back to 9/11 17 years ago, and I want to relive that day to see what started it all, because I never want to forget what happened on our soil, the American soil, and the attack that occurred. And a lot of people listening today were very young, and they couldn't recount what happened that day. They've seen the planes on YouTube and things. They've seen the planes hit the towers. But as far as recounting specifically what happened that day, they could not tell the story. I couldn't tell the story conclusively. I was listening to it on the radio, but as far as what specifically happened that day, I couldn't do that. And so I wanted to go back and go through the events of that day really quick to give you an idea what really happened on that day. And then I'll get into some of the effects of that. What effect did it have on our world? So History.com recorded the day very specifically, and I want you, if you're driving along, obviously you can't do this, but I want you to go almost into a dream state, like you're daydreaming, and I want you to just think back with me. If you have to, close your eyes and just picture yourself where you were at, what you were doing, and let's go back through that day. On a clear, sunny, late summer day on September 1, on September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers, 15 of whom were Saudi nationals, aboard 3 hijacked passenger planes carried out coordinated suicide attacks against the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing everyone on board the planes and nearly 3,000 people on the ground. A 4th plane crashed into a Pennsylvania field, killing everyone on board, and after passengers and crew attempted to wrest the control of the hijackers of the plane. So I want to go through the events really quick of 9/11 as they unfolded, because we never want to forget this event that happened on our soil. At 7:59 a.m., and I want you to notice how just a short 12-hour period can change the course of a nation forever. You remember, some of you will remember, if you learned in history, whatever, if you're younger, what happened in Pearl Harbor. And that's what drew America into World War II. Well, then you can understand the ramifications of this and how we launched the global war on terror as a result of this event. At 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 with 92 people aboard, it took off from Boston's Logan International Airport en route to Los Angeles. At 8:14 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767 with 65 people aboard, takes off from Boston, and it is also headed to Los Angeles. At 8:19, now we're talking just within a 10-minute period, flight attendants aboard Flight 11 alert ground personnel that the plane has been hijacked. American Airlines notifies the FBI. At 8:20, American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from Dulles International Airport outside of Washington, D.C., and the Boeing 757 is headed for Los Angeles with 64 people on board. At 8:24 a.m., hijacker Mohammed Atta makes the first of 2 accidental transmissions from Flight 11 to ground control. And they speculate that apparently it was an attempt to communicate with the plane's cabin. At 8:40 a.m., the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, alerts North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, and the Northeast Air Defense Sector, NEADS, about the suspected hijacking of Flight 11. In response, NEADS scrambles 2 fighter planes located at Cape Cod's Otis Air National Guard Base to locate the tail Flight 11. And they're not yet in the air when Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower. At 8:41 a.m., now many of you would remember that experience if you listened to it on the radio or saw it on TV, and you would think, well, somebody just got off course and hit. That's what I thought. Somebody got off, and many people I've talked to, they thought when the North Tower was hit, hey, somebody just got off course and flew into a building in New York. Now, that's what a lot of people I've talked to have said. At 8:41 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757 with 44 people aboard, takes off from Newark International Airport en route to San Francisco. It had been scheduled to depart at 8 around the time the other hijacked flights had taken off. At 8:46 a.m., Mohammed Atta and the other hijackers aboard American Airlines Flight 11 crashed a plane into floors 93 through 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing everyone on board and hundreds inside the building. At 8:47, within seconds, New York Police Department and the New York Fire Departments, our forces, they dispatch units to the World Trade Center. And while the Port Authority Police Department offers on-site, and they're beginning the immediate evacuation of the North Tower, while the plane is in the, or what I should say, what's left of the plane, the destroyed floors up above, they're already starting to evacuate people out of the lower floors. At 8:50, the White House Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, alerts President George W. Bush that a plane has hit the World Trade Center, and the president is visiting an elementary school in Sarasota, Florida at that time. At 9:02 a.m., after initially instructing tenants of the World Trade Center's South Tower to remain in the building, Port Authority officials broadcast orders to evacuate both towers via the public address system. An estimated 10,000 to 14,000 people are already in the process of evacuating. So this is all within about a 60-minute period of time, from the planes taking off to where they're already starting to evacuate people. 9:03 a.m., hijackers crashed United Airlines Flight 175 into floors 75 through 85 of the World Trade Center's South Tower, killing everyone on board and hundreds inside the building. 9:08 a.m., the FAA bans all takeoffs of flights going to New York City or through the airspace around the city. 9:21 a.m., the Port Authority closes all bridges and tunnels in the New York City area. 9:24, the FAA notified needs of the suspected hijack of Flight 77 after some passengers and crew aboard are able to alert family members on the ground. 9:31 a.m., speaking from Florida, President Bush calls the events in New York City an apparent terrorist attack on our country. At 9:37 a.m., hijackers aboard the Flight 77 crashed the plane into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing 59 aboard the plane and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. At 9:42 a.m., for the first time in history, the FAA grounds all flights over or bound for the continental United States. Some 3,300 commercial flights and 1,200 private flights are guided to airports in Canada and the United States over the next 2.5 hours. 9:45 a.m. We're not even 2 hours into this. Amid escalating rumors of the attacks, the White House and U.S. Capitol building are evacuated. At 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses. At 10:07 a.m., after passengers and crew members aboard the hijacked Flight 93 contact friends and family and learn about the attacks in New York and Washington, they mount an attempt to retake the plane. In response, hijackers deliberately crashed the plane into a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all 40 passengers and crew aboard. At 10:28 a.m., the World Trade Center's North Tower collapses 102 minutes after being struck by Flight 11. At 11 a.m., Mayor Rudolph Giuliani calls for the evacuation of Lower Manhattan south of Canal Street, including more than 1 million residents, workers, and tourists. At 1 p.m., from a U.S. Air Force base in Louisiana, President Bush announces the U.S. military forces are on high alert worldwide. 2:51 p.m., the U.S. Navy dispatches missile destroyers to New York and Washington, D.C. At 5:20 p.m., the 47-story 7 World Trade Center collapses after burning for hours. The building had been evacuated in the morning, and there are no casualties. At 6:58 p.m., President Bush returns to the White House after stops at military bases in Louisiana and Nebraska. And at 8:30 p.m., just about 12.5 hours from the planes taking off that morning, President Bush addresses the nation, calling the attacks evil, despicable acts of terror, and declaring that America, its friends, and allies would stand together to win the war against terrorism. Now, those are the accounts of the day, and I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories of what transpired on 9/11. I have my own opinions, as of all of you do as well. And so you've heard all the stories, you've watched all the YouTube videos, you've seen the conspiracy videos, everybody's got their own opinions of 911. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it was one of the most tragic events that's ever happened on American soil. Pearl Harbor, 911, I mean, just devastating events. Thousands of our American brothers and sisters lost. And I pray for their families. I pray for them since. Do never want to make light of the situation. And we need to stand with them today in prayer. I know there are vigils and things going on all around the United States, especially in New York. And I have a lot of friends in New York. We just started a church in New York over this past year, and many of them were affected by this. They had friends and not, I don't know if they had family, but they had friends and people that they knew that were either down there near it or were in the trade towers. I don't know if anybody in the New York church that we started had anybody that perished in the trade towers, but they all had they had friends and acquaintances and things that they knew that were down near there or down in that area when it happened. So I'll leave the conspiracy theories to others. That's not the point of my program today. The point of my program today is to ask the question from a prophetic standpoint and to remember 911 today. But the question I'm asking today, and I'll go through in the latter part of the program, is, did 911 start the sixth trumpet war? You understand, in the book of Revelation, there are 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 vials, the skeletal structure of the book of Revelation. Well, the first 5 trumpets, we believe, have already occurred. And the sixth trumpet war is the next event to occur on God's prophetic timeline. So we'll be talking about that throughout the latter part of our program here and discussing, did the events that transpired after this declaration of war on global war on terrorism, what did those events lead to? Will they lead to the eventual explosion of World War III globally? I'll get to that and discuss the prophecy when we get back from the break.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctor's offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So in answering the question or endeavoring, and this is speculation, I know that, but we've got to talk about it because it could be precursors to the eventual, when we finally get into a full-on World War III, we could be in precursors to that. We've got to talk about it. So the Sixth Trumpet War or World War III, let's discuss that real quick, and then I'll get into maybe some of the proofs before we get to the end of the program. As some of the aftermath or this declaration of the global war on terror, which has been going on for 17 years now. Think about it. A 17-year war that isn't even close to ending. I mean, how do you eradicate terrorism totally? But yet, President Bush declared war, a global war on terrorism, almost a never-ending war. And so, when you talk about the sixth trumpet war, it's located in Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 16. And I'm going to read from the New Living Translation because it's just a little more explanatory than the King James Version. It says the same thing, but it's a little more explanatory in the verbiage. So it says, "Then the sixth angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice speaking from the four horns of the golden altar that stands in the presence of God. And the voice said to the sixth angel who held the trumpet, 'Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates.' Then the four angels who had been prepared for this hour, day, and a month, and a year were turned loose to kill 1/3 of all the people on the earth." Not the people involved in the war. 1/3 of all the people on the earth. "And I heard the size of their army, which was 200 million mounted troops." So at the end of the day, we tried, we went to all the translations and tried to make it say, only 1/3 of the people involved in the war or something like that. None of the translations say that. And so we went through 15 or 20 of them, and they all refer to 1/3 of the earth's population. And that, I'm telling you, that I'm not letting that roll off my tongue like it is not serious. We're talking about something the earth has never experienced. Even when the flood happened back with Noah, there wasn't near that many people on the earth at that time. And so nothing like this is unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever occurred by any stretch of the imagination. Haven't even come close. And so this is a war that's prophesied in the near future. Actually on God's prophetic timeline, it's one of the next two events to occur along with the peace agreement. And so we're staring it right in the face. We could be in the precursors to that war when when Bush declared war on this global war on terror. So in the prophecy, these angels who are bound in the Euphrates River, they're spirits. The Bible tells us that angels are ministering spirits to us who are the heirs of salvation. However, these four angels referred to in Revelation 9:14 that are bound in the river Euphrates, they're not ministering angels because they are part of the third portion of angels who rebelled with Satan. They are evil spirits. All angels are spirits, but these are evil spirits. How do we know that? Because we know these angels are evil because this verse says they're bound. And when they're loosed, their assignment is to kill 1/3 of mankind. And so this happens during this war that we're referring to in Revelation 9. Actually, if you want to read the whole prophecy, it's Revelation 9, verse 13 through 21. I just read Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 16 to cover my topic today. So where does the war start? It starts in the Euphrates River region. Loose the angels bound in the river Euphrates. The Euphrates River starts in Turkey, flows down through Syria, enters into the northern boundary of Iraq. Then it empties into the Persian Gulf, and the river comes within, it forms the border between Iraq and Iran for about the last 60 miles. So there's four nations, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, that house the Euphrates River. And 60 to 70% of the Euphrates River is in Iraq. And if you think about where most of the conflict on the planet is occurring today, it's in the Euphrates River region. And so the United States currently has troops stationed all along the Euphrates River. And it's actually the dividing line in Syria right now between what the United States controls and what Russia controls. Russia and Iran and Syria on the west side, United States and the Kurds and some other people on the their other allies on the eastern side. And so at this moment, the conflict is brewing in Iran, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East. It's the most dangerous conflict zone on the planet as we speak. And it's this area where the Bible says World War III will occur, if it has not already begun. And it appears as if we're on the brink of this great six trumpet war. So why am I tying this into 911? Well, what's the first thing that George Bush did when 911 occurred? We go straight over into the Middle East. We didn't go to Russia, China. We didn't go to South America. We didn't go to South Africa. Where did we go? Middle East. It's time for the war on God's prophetic timeline. Where do we head? I mean, because 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. So we go straight to the Middle East. And as far as the war is concerned, because over 2 billion people are prophesied to die in this war, it's doubtful that the war will be contained in the Euphrates River region. And wait till you hear some of the articles that I have coming up. It's doubtful that it's going to be contained in that area, because if every Arab was to be destroyed, let's say, in the Middle East, that's still, I think, only like 450 to 500 million. So right there right along the Euphrates River region. And so not going to happen. So so there are a total of 7.5 billion people alive in our world today. And remember, in this war, there's going to be about 2.5 to 2.6 billion people killed. So it can't be right there in the Middle East region. So it's going to spread out around the world. It's going to start there. It's going to originate there, but it's going to emanate out from there, and it's going to spread. So who will be involved in the war? Well, we know that Mao Zedong, the late leader of China, he boasted in his diary that he could field an army of 200 million men. And of course, Revelation 9:16 says that the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. So it's not a coincidence that Mao Zedong, a godless atheist man, would say the exact number. I mean, come on. And that of the number of men that he could field in an army, that was found in Revelation 9:16. So, as a result, does that mean China will be part of this end-time war? It's highly likely that they will be part of it. However, there are two other entities that could actually field an army of 200 million men. The Islamic world, they've got they claim 1.7 billion adherents globally. And then, of course, India, about 1.2 billion in population. So any of those three entities could field an army of 200 million soldiers and fulfill the prophecy and be involved in this war. And we definitely have to consider the Islamic faction in the prophecy, because if you'll remember, this war emanates out of the Euphrates River region, and all four nations that house the Euphrates River region are almost all Islamic controlled, are almost 100% Islamic. And so we definitely have to count them into the faction. They're going to be involved one way or another. And we can also be sure that the United States is going to be involved in a war. We currently have, we have our fingers in every single conflict going on in the Middle East. Think about it. In one way or another. We're involved in everything. And so to think that we would pull out of it all and another war start, it could have happened, sure. But it's highly doubtful that would occur. The United States would most definitely be involved. And the United States, along with Russia, does have the nuclear firepower to kill 2.5 billion people. And so the United States will most definitely be, it would be highly unlikely that we would not be involved. And along probably with Russia. Russia's got just as much, if not more, nuclear weapons than the United States does. The United States and Russia combined control 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal. So to say that those two entities, at least the United States, would not be involved, I just don't see that being the case. One of us will have to be involved, because it's going to take nuclear weapons to kill that many people. You're not going to kill 2.5 billion people with tanks and airplanes. I mean, you're talking about nuclear war, folks. Read Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 21. You'll see what I'm saying. Now, tying the sixth trumpet war into 911, and again, this is speculation on my part. I know that. But we've got to look at it because it's a 17-year-long war now, and it's not near over. And the Bible says that this war that emanates from the Euphrates River region, which is where most of this war is being fought, it's going to emanate out of the Euphrates River region, and it's going to spread around the world, killing 1/3 of the world's population. And it's time on God's prophetic timeline for this war to occur now. And so the Daily Star reports that after 9/11, the world is in a perpetual state of war. Now listen at this, folks. You remember at 11 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, the Bush administration had already declared that Al-Qaeda was responsible for the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. At 9:30 p.m., a war cabinet was formed comprising of top intelligence and military advisors, and at 11 p.m., at the end of this historic meeting at the White House, the war on terror was officially announced. Now listen at this. Remember the prophecy. And according to the legendary journalist Tom Engelhard, in January of 2018, he stated this. He said, America's war on terror has already spread to 76 countries across the globe. That's roughly 39% of the entire planet, as identified by the Cost of War Project. So remember what the prophecy says. It's going to start in the Euphrates River region, which we went straight over to the Middle East to attack. We went right into Afghanistan right after 9/11 occurred. But as a result of the people that will be destroyed as a result of this war, it's going to start there, but it's going to spread around the world. And Tom Engelhard, this legendary journalist, you can look him up, he said that America's war on terror has already spread to 76 countries across the globe, or about 39% of the entire planet. And you realize the terrorism that's going on around the world. People getting hit by vans and buses and, I mean, all kinds of stuff, going in and shooting people. I mean, it's crazy. And there is a war on terror against these people. And so when we get back, I'll go through some more stuff. But is it possible that 9/11, with the global war on terror, this declaration of this global war, started World War III? Many people, many very influential people believe that.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time Magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and lead them in doctor's offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
So on top of the previous article, The Express also writes, this was back in 2016, that we're already at war. World War III started on 9/11 with the Twin Tower terrorist attack and ex-chief blasts. In 2016, Britain's former commander in Afghanistan pushed aside Turkey's warning that of the World War III has begun. He stated that a global war has already been raging for 15 years now. Numan Kurtulmuş, the deputy minister of Turkey, warned that the Syrian conflict could spark a full-out conflict between Russia and America. Colonel Richard Kemp dismissed the caution as he argued that World War III already started on 9/11 when terrorists killed almost 3,000 people at that point. He was speaking to talk radio. The former chief said, I think we're well into the Third World War. The major beginning of World War III was 9/11. It's essentially the first international insurgency as opposed to an insurgency which takes place within the civilian population in one particular country. And if you think about it, this international insurgency, look at all of the major players that are in the Middle East right now. And conflict is going on there. And so when you talk about Russia and America, both in the Middle East right now, that's huge. And now China is wanting to join in now. And you've got Turkey and Iran and Syria and Israel and Iraq. And there's so many people involved in all of this. And now you heard this one author say that, this journalist say that the war on terror has spread to 76 countries around the world. And they're calling this an international insurgency that they're talking about. They're saying that this World War III has already begun. And the former chief said the global conflict raging today was a modern world war, which will continue for far longer than both the First and Second World Wars, as it has crept into every corner of the world. Colonel Kemp said, we now have an international insurgency which is effectively Islamic jihadist. I'm talking about here in the United States, all over the world. And he said, who are determined to instigate their way of life onto Muslim and non-Muslim countries by violent means. It's happening more or less everywhere in the world. We've seen fighting take place in virtually all countries around the world since then, albeit not in a form that we would recognize. In other words, they don't have tanks and airplanes storming across the land, but they're infiltrating our educational system and political systems, and it could be your librarian and somebody that lives in your neighborhood and this, that, and the other. They're infiltrating like that. And he's saying the modern version of a world war is what we're seeing. And then he said that the dismissal of an imminent nuclear war comes after Mr. Koutumis said the conflict in Syria had put the world on the brink of the beginning of a large regional or global war. Well, the dismissal of the imminent nuclear war, okay, he's off there because this is going to be a nuclear war. And so I wouldn't agree with him on that point, but could we have started World War III, the Sixth Trumpet War? Yes, we could have. Can I prove that conclusively? I got to make sure you guys know, no, I can't. And I want to be upfront and honest with you on that. I talked to Irvin right before I come on the program. I said, I'm fixing to do a 911 program. You did one last year. Let's talk about it. And at this point, we can't conclusively say 100% yes. The clues point that way. But could we say yes? No, we can't right now. And so the only thing I can do today is give you the clues. Now, 9/11 sparked all kinds of things, not just the war on terror. When we look back at that, it changed America forever. Listen at this. So beyond the global war on terror, the KQED, the lowdown, it reports on a few of the many dramatic impacts resulting from the events of that tragic day. So the war on terror, yes. Less than a month after 9/11, U.S. troops invaded Afghanistan in an attempt to dismantle al-Qaeda. Many of you all remember it. The terrorist group obviously claimed responsibility for the attacks, and we went to remove the Taliban governing that was harboring it. So 2 years later, in March 2003, the United States invaded Iraq and deposed President Saddam Hussein. Many of you all remember that. And although not directly linked to the terrorist attacks, Hussein was suspected of producing weapons of mass destruction, and obviously none were ever found. Now, I'm not getting into all the conspiracy theorists, and I've got my own opinions, but we'll leave that to other people. But the invasion was a key part of America's newly launched war on terror under the leadership of President George W. Bush. Our military involvement in Afghanistan, which continues today, has turned into the longest running war in U.S. history. So you say, wow, the war on terror, No. It's the longest running war in U.S. history, everybody. And although former U.S. combat operations ended in 2014, more than 8,000 U.S. troops are still there to stem the ongoing Taliban insurgency. In August 2017, President Trump announced his intention to boost troop levels in the region in response to the deteriorating security conditions. And then back in December 2011, remaining U.S. troops were pulled out of Iraq, leaving the nation in a far more volatile state than when military operations first began in 2003. You understand that as the Islamist State extremists came out of that, they sprouted from the chaos of that war, and they continued to terrorize the region. The U.S. has resumed intermittent airstrikes and different things against them as well. So what a mess the Middle East region is it's been chaos for a long time. But since 9/11, it's really ratcheted up. Of course, since 9/11, you've got airport security. I mean, when have you been through airport security lately? We travel just about every weekend, and airport security is nuts. I kind of think it's okay on some ways because I don't want somebody getting on a plane with a bomb. But before 911, you could just listen at this. So long airport lines, you've all been through them, full body scans, the occasional pat down. And, it's all par for the course when you fly these days. Prior to 911, none of that, folks. But, not so long ago, it wasn't unusual to show up at the airport a half an hour before a domestic flight. Keep your shoes tied, skip through the metal detector while sipping on a big glass of Coke, all without ever having to show your ID. Think about that. Going through without showing your ID. There's no way you go to jail right now if you try to get through there without an ID. And before the advent of color-coded security threat warnings, pat-downs were rare, liquids were allowed, and the notion of having to go through full-body scanners was the stuff of like Star Wars movie. I mean, it was in the future somewhere. But now we've realized that. Believe it or not, prior to 911, some airport security teams even allow passengers to take box cutters on board. And that, obviously, that's the supposed weapon that were used by the 911 hijackers. Any knife with a blade up to 4 inches long was permitted. There's no way you could do that now. So in the wake of the terrorist attacks, airport security underwent a series of major overhauls, and a service that was once largely provided by private companies is now primarily overseen by the massive Transportation Security Administration. Obviously created in the wake of 911, the TSA now institutes new security procedures and managing screenings at every commercial airport checkpoint. Most of you have been through that. And then, of course, and finally, the big surveillance in the United States. The U.S. intelligence state boomed. It exploded in the wake of 911. The growth resulted in a marked increase in government oversight, primarily through a vast clandestine network of phone and web surveillance. Classified documents that were leaked in 2013 by former government contractor Edward Snowden detail the expansion of a colossal surveillance state that's seeped into the lives of millions of ordinary Americans. The exponential growth of this apparatus, armed with a $52.6 billion budget in 2013, was brought to light when the Washington Post obtained a black budget report from Snowden detailing the bureaucratic and operational landscape of the 16 spy agencies, more than 107,000 employees that now make up the U.S. intelligence community. And it's all it's happening every day. It's probably bigger than that by now. Further audits reveal that the National Security Agency alone has annually scooped up as many as 56,000 emails and other communications by Americans with no connection to terrorism. And in doing so, that they have violated privacy laws thousands of times per year. So, in remembering 9/11, it was more, it was a tragedy. Obviously, horrible tragedy. Almost 3,000 people killed. Firemen, police officers. I mean, I've got inspirational stories that I could tell of people that went back time and time again to get more people out. I mean, I know personally a story of an individual who they saw in some people who got out told the story of a guy with a red bandana on covering his nose and his mouth. They had known this man because he was always known to have a red bandana. He would, blow his nose on it, whatever. He had a red bandana. Well, they saw that man, the man with the red bandana is what he's become known as. And he was going up and down stairwells getting people out, ushering them out, coming back, getting more, ushering them out, coming back, getting more. The man ended up perishing. He went back in to get more people. The building collapsed. And there are a plethora of stories like that, of heroes, of firemen, of policemen that kept going back in and showing the spirit and the heroism of our American brothers and sisters. And so we always want to remember them, to pray for our families, and to remember what happened on our American soil, but to also, from a prophetic standpoint in our mind, to look out on the heels of this tragic event, what was set into play. On the heels of Pearl Harbor, we entered World War II. On the heels of 9/11, did we enter into World War III? And so it's a question that we have to ask from a prophetic standpoint. And I wanted to bring it up today because it's so important. You understand, I just put a huge timeline in one of our recent, I think it was the July-August edition of End Time Magazine. And I put all the prophecies that are supposed to occur, or the biggest majority of them, from the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago, all the way to after the great white throne of judgment, when we enter into eternity. And there's about 55 or 57 prophecies on that timeline. Everything that's have occurred up till now, and everything that will occur from now till we move off into eternity with the Lord. And the next two events to occur are this sixth trumpet war we've been talking about today, and the peace agreement that will come. And so it's time. We have to talk about it now, and we need to understand the prophecies and look at these things in light of Bible prophecy. So God bless you all, and remember to keep in prayer the victims and their families of 9/11.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of End Time Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with End Time Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.